there's not much information in this area, and a lot of the information which is available in the end turns out to be not very accurate. A lot of the press stories, for example, present investments as done deals, when in fact all that's happening is that there's a delegation visiting, or there's a plan or something. So it's really quite difficult to get at what is actually happening. The big thing which is driving the recent upsurge does appear to be food security concerns following the world food crisis and the high food price episode. If you talk to investors in the Gulf, then what concerned them particularly about the recent developments on world food markets was not so much the high food prices. These are wealthy countries, they can pay those. What they were particularly concerned about was the fact that a number of key exporters imposed export restrictions, which meant that at any price, food supplies were less available. And so there was this questioning in the minds of some of these import-dependent countries about how reliable international markets were as a source of supply. And of course, the WTO disciplines on things like export restrictions are really quite weak. It's a whole range of different investors involved here. The private sector predominates. And I think this is something, again, which perhaps the press coverage tends not to indicate, which is that we see Saudi Arabia is investing in Ethiopia. Well, it's Saudi Arabian companies which are investing in Ethiopia, not necessarily the Saudi Arabian government. The destination of these investment flows has been very much Africa, and particular countries within Africa. Sudan, for example, Ethiopia have been particular targets, but really throughout Africa. I do detect from discussions recently with investors and a number of other people that the emphasis on Africa is weakening, and certainly there's a greater interest now in Latin America. Land acquisitions do predominate. There are other forms of investments as well which which are perhaps more like the traditional foreign direct investment. Some of these land acquisitions are extremely large. This acquisition of assets and operation of assets to produce directly is rather against the trend in foreign direct investment in agriculture. In recent years, there's been a movement away from direct production and towards looser forms of vertical integration. One of the key problems facing developing country agriculture over decades has been a lack of investment. At least $30 billion per year is needed, additional investment in order to meet the various hunger targets. The advantages which countries see in these investments are some of the broader developmental benefits: technology transfer, employment creation, linkages into the domestic economy, and of course infrastructural developments, construction of port facilities, roads, rail, and so on, which is a crucial limitation on developing country agricultural productivity, especially in Africa. And there's economic, political, social, ethical concerns surrounding these investments. The record on foreign direct investment in agriculture over the years does unfortunately suggest that many of those concerns are well-founded. A review of the literature on the impacts of foreign direct investment in agriculture leaves us with some unease, and at least not a conviction that there are definitely positive effects to be had. Most of the onus of actions to attract investment and to make sure it meets the requirements of developing countries, it meets their investment needs and has positive developmental benefits, The onus for that falls very much on developing countries, on the host countries, rather than the investing countries. It's not so much to say no to these investments, perhaps, but rather to make sure that the policy and legislative framework is in place to make sure that they maximize the benefits and minimize the risks.